Everyone, how's it going? My name is richardlmoglen. Welcome back to the weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And this week I've kind of cast a wide net here among the kind of three groups that I'm really focused on: the semiconductors, social media, and fintech. So as always, we'll go through both the fundamentals and technicals of all the stocks on my focus list, and I'll talk through how I would trade each of them. So starting things off, we've got AMAT, which is one of the first kind of semiconductor stocks to break out just 2 weeks ago. You had a nice pivot right here, and it's very, very tight here around 140. Ideally, you would get a pullback to 21 EMA, but you could also use the 10-day moving average, which is around here or so, as an undercut and reclaim entry. And so far, looks very strong, holding up really well, declining volume here during this tightness, and looks very constructive. Earnings are very strong, great estimates for 2021 and 2022. Comms rating at 99, nothing to complain about there. Increasing fund ownership and to high quality funds in there as well. So I view this as one of the top leaders in the space, and I'll be going through a couple other semiconductor stocks in this video. Next up, we've got apps, which is a former leader in 2020. Looks pretty wide and loose here, but it is tightening along this base here, forming a little bit of a VCP pattern. It isn't as tight as I would like to have it. Ideally, one more contraction here, pull back to the 21 EMA, 50 SMA, around 80. That would be ideal, but you do have a pivot right at this high as well as this high right here, and that point is at 88.14. So this is a strong stock, great earnings. Estimates for 2021 are very strong at 240%. Comms rating is 98, increasing fund ownership, and one high quality fund in there as well. Moving on, we've got another semiconductor in COHU, and you can see really fantastic earnings, especially this past quarter. Earnings up 999%, sales up 42%, margins strong as well. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022, although the estimate revisions are down, which is one drawback. But overall, comms rating is a 99. Not really increasing fund ownership. It has kind of increased from March of 2020, and no high quality funds, which is one drawback for me. Looking at the chart, you can see it's moved up strongly from this stage base here, which is a stage 1. Now it's within a stage 2 consolidation, a little bit of a cup and handle feel here. And this handle so far is only 1 week long. So 100% this could go sideways for a few more weeks, maybe undercut and reclaim this kind of level right here, this low, which is at 48.91. That would be a pretty good entry. And of course, you've got the standard pivot here at 51.86. Moving on, we've got DEN, which has been super strong since its IPO here. You can see it's 129% from this stage 1 cup of the handle pivot. Great earnings the past 2 quarters. Sales are actually down, but margins are strong. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022, although once again, the estimate revisions are down. Comms rating is a 98. Not increasing fund ownership, which once again is one drawback, and no high quality fund ownership in there as well. As for a chart, you can see it try to break out of this pretty short consolidation and now has pulled back, undercut this pivot here, found support near the 21 EMA, and I think it's just below that pivot. The close was at 46.22, so it's just below this pivot here. So I'm looking for a retake of that level, or potentially a takeout of this high, and this is a 2-2 reversal here on this Friday. Composite rating, once again, very strong. RS rating is a 94. RS line right near all-time highs. Moving on, we've got FUTU, and once again, blowout earnings, sales, and margins the past few quarters. Estimates for 2021, 2022, super strong. Estimate revisions up, which is significant. Comms rating is a 99, and you can see increasing fund ownership, although still not that many funds at all in this stock, and no high quality funds, which once again is one small drawback. Looking at the chart, this is a pretty deep consolidation. They actually don't have it even as a consolidation here on MarketSmith, but it goes from 204.25 all the way down to 99.84, so about 50% deep. But it has reclaimed quite a bit of that, retaken the 50 SMA. That has now switched to support, and I really liked the action to end the week on Thursday, breaking through this short kind of downward trend line here, strong bar here, and then once again a nice consolidation day on Friday on lower volume. So what I'm looking for is to break through this pivot, which is this close, and that level is at 158.82, or potentially this high, which is at 164. 68.5 on volume. Moving on, we've got KOPN, another semiconductor, and overall, you can draw in a descending trend line here. Very strong earnings this past quarter. Sales very good as well at 59%. Margins strong as well, up 9.1%. Not really any estimates for 2021 or 2022. Comps rating is at 97. Not really increasing fund ownership, just this most recent quarter, and no high quality funds in there as well. As for the chart, it's having trouble here with 11.67. So I want to see it retake that level on volume. And I like how it's kind of frustrated a lot of people, myself included. I got stopped out for a small loss, then a small gain last week. But once it works, this is a fast moving name, as you can see from this prior run up. Moving on, we've got LRCX, once again, another semiconductor stock. Great earnings and very consistent earnings the past few quarters. Strong sales and margins as well. Decent estimates for 2021 and 2022. Comps rating is a 9.9. Increasing fund ownership and a whole bunch of high quality funds in there as well. As for the chart, you can see it just broke out of the stage 2 consolidation. And last week it didn't really pull back. It just kind of wedged up on lower volume. So I'm looking for potentially a pullback into this pivot area and then a 2-2 reversal up to potentially start an entry into this potential leader. Moving on, we've got LYFT, and it had a pocket pivot on this past Friday off the 60 level, as well as an undercut and reclaim of this low. Not really any growth numbers here and no strong estimates for 2021 and 2022, but there's just a lot of signs of institutional accumulation, these big blue bars here. And going over to a weekly, I really like this constructive pullback here to the 50 SMA right at a kind of expected resistance level where it kind of set this intermediate high during its IPO base phase. So overall looking for a undercut and reclaim of this level or potentially a continued move up and break of this pivot. So going back to the daily, you can see 21 EMA is a key level here. This previous high would signify a 2-2 reversal if it goes to the upside. And then I want to see it challenge this pivot at 68.28. Moving on, we've got Micron Technology. You can see very strong earnings, sales, and margins the past 3 quarters. Very strong estimates for 2021 and 2022, up near 100% both years. This is very significant and excellent estimate revisions as well. Comps rating is a strong 98, increasing fund ownership. And looking at the chart, there's a little bit of a consolidation here. Market Smith pattern rec doesn't pick it up just yet, but this would be kind of a stage 2 here. And you've got the standard pivot at 95.75, so it's just below that at this point. And I'm looking for a move through this level on volume. I like the undercut of this previous low, then a strong retake of the 50 SMA, and a move up on volume. Looks very, very good. Moving on, we've got PINS, which has been one of the strongest of the former leaders, forming a stage 1 cup here. So even though it's had this fantastic run, this is still technically just a stage 1. And overall, you can see very strong earnings and sales the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for 2021, 2022, revisions up as well. Comms rating is a 9.9. A great increase in fund ownership from 0 to over 1,000 funds and a whole bunch of high quality funds invested as well. I'm watching this stock to see if it either blows through here and doesn't form out a handle, or if it does pull back through this point and kind of just consolidate for a bit. That would be ideal. Shake out below the 80, retake that, and then break out through this high, which would be at 85.98. So a couple scenarios here, but I'm watching this stock because I do believe it has a strong earnings runway, as you can see from the estimates, and it's got kind of a group move behind it as well, with a lot of the social media stocks doing well, as we'll see from Twitter and also Snapchat. Moving on, we've got QFIN, similar to FUTU, great earnings and sales and margins the past 2 quarters. Strong estimates for 2021 and 2022. Comps rating is a 9.9. Nice increase in fund ownership, no high quality funds. And looking at the chart, you can see it's pretty choppy, but it is trying to tighten up here against the 50 SMA. You've got a pivot at this high and this high as well that I'm watching, and a nice inside day to end the week on Friday. Moving on, we've got QRVO, another semiconductor related stock, pulling back to the pivot this past week with a nice upside reversal on this Friday. Great earnings and sales the past few quarters, strong estimates for 2021, 2022. Comms rating is a 98, and you've got an increase in funds over the past 2 years and one high quality fund in there as well. So what I'm looking for is a continued move up, potentially a 2-2 reversal to start the week, and a reclaim of this pivot, or potentially you could draw a descending trend line here using these two highs and buy a break of that. But overall, I want to see a move up on volume. I love how this pullback here was definitely on below average volume, indicating there's not a lot of sellers, and a lot of people want to keep their stock at this level. So that is QRVO. And next up, we've got recent IPO RBLX, Roblox Corporation. Overall, accelerating earnings the past few quarters. Decent estimates for 2021 and 2022. You can see they're supposed to be up 27% in 2022, although the estimate revisions are down, which is one drawback. Overall composite rating is very poor at 26. EPS rating is only a 4. That's because it just doesn't have a lot of history because it is such a recent IPO, and there's no fund information just yet. Overall, it had a nice pocket pivot on Monday and also to end the week on Friday. You can see that in the volume here, but it didn't have a very strong close on this Friday. So I want to see if it can open within this wick, potentially challenge this high, or potentially it could have just an inside day, kind of shake some people out and then break through this high. And that is at 71.83. No, that's at 74.99. So that's a potential pivot, as well as, of course, the standard IPO-based pivot at 79.1. So that is Roblox. And next up, we've got RIOT, which is a kind of cryptocurrency-related stock. You can see that from here. Provides exposure to the blockchain ecosystem. And overall, you can draw in a pretty steep descending trend line here. And it is also kind of tightening up against the 50 SMA. Looking at the earnings, you can see a nice quarter. This past quarter, earnings up 164%, sales up 341%, and margins up 73.9%. Decent estimates for 2021, and the estimate revisions are up. Nothing for 2022. The overall composite rating is at 88. A gradual increase in fund ownership over the past 2 years, and no high-quality funds in there just yet. Looking back at the chart, you could use an undercut and reclaim of the 50 SMA, or a break through these highs here as it tightens up against that key moving average, with this being a pivot as well. But keep in mind, this is a very explosive and fast mover, both to the upside and the downside. So position size accordingly and really know where your kind of pain points are and where you should put your stop losses. Definitely, I would keep pretty tight stop losses on this one. Moving on, we've got another Bitcoin-related stock, and this is kind of the higher quality version of RIOT, and also Mara, I believe. But SI is very strong. You can see, once again, you can draw this descending trend line. A nice end to the week on Friday. Very strong earnings this past quarter. Earnings up 147%, sales up 16%, and margins strong as well. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022. And you can see a nice composite rating at 99, increasing fund ownership, and 2 high-quality funds in there as well, which indicates a little bit about how they view this company versus a RIOT or a Mara. And overall, looking at the chart, it is a pretty deep base at about 50%. Then this pullback was 30%. But overall, it tightened up a little bit last week, shook some people out, and now is challenging this pivot, and that high is at 164 flat. So you could use that as your pivot, with this low being your stop. But once again, make sure you're managing your risk and your position size, because this is a very volatile name, both to the upside and the downside, although it is a potential true market leader. Moving on, we've got SLQT, and you can see very strong quarterly earnings the past 2 quarters. Very strong estimates for 2021 and 2022. Composite rating is a 90. Increasing fund ownership, and 1 high-quality fund just starting a position. And this is within the kind of turbulent zone. So once again, this is a little bit volatile, but going back to the daily, you can see it is above that key level at this point, but you do have this kind of point of resistance to deal with, and it has been a little bit shaky the past few days. So maybe it goes sideways, then challenges this pivot. That would be ideal, so you can manage risk at these lows. Next up, we've got SMH, and this is kind of a way to play the overall semiconductor space. And overall, it is kind of forming a handle here. Last week, it went sideways. And if it does so again, that would be very constructive. Maybe a shakeout and reclaim above 250, and then a challenge of this pivot at 258.59. And in general, I think this is a great way to play the overall group move. And if you want a little bit more volatility, both to the upside and the downside, you could also use the kind of 3X semiconductors, which is SOXL. Moving on, we've got SQ, and overall you can see a very strong move to end the week. A lot of volume coming in as well. Solid earnings the past 2 quarters with sales very strong as well. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022. Composite rating is a 9.9. Nice growth in fund ownership and a bunch of high quality funds in there as well. And this did break out above the kind of double bottom pivot here at around 250. But if it kind of pulls back, potentially undercuts that level and moves up, that would be a great buy point. Or if it continues up here, forms out a high handle, and then breaks through this pivot at 283.19, that's another place that you could manage your risk. Moving on, we've got SWKS, another semiconductor name, once again forming the kind of similar cup and handle shape with 1 week of consolidation. Overall, nice earnings this past quarter, earnings up 100%, sales up 69%. Nice estimates for 2021 and further increases expected in 2022. Composite rating is a 94, a nice increase in fund ownership, and 2 high quality funds in there as well. Overall, you've got this as your pivot, this high, which is at 191.97, and of course the standard pivot of the consolidation at 195.82. Moving on, we've got Twitter, and once again, the entire social media space, Twitter, Pins, and Snap are acting very well and showing a lot of signs of accumulation within their respective bases. And nice earnings the past quarter, earnings up 52%, sales up 28%, and you can see that it's just supposed to be profitable in 2021, and a further increase of 33% is expected in 2022, although the estimate revisions are down. The composite rating is a 91, nice increase in fund ownership, and 3 high quality funds in there as well. And you can see it's just at this kind of midpoint pivot here. So maybe it goes sideways a little bit, burst through that would be a good point. And you could set your stop right here. Or if it keeps on going up, forms a high handle, that would also be a good spot to get in to this stock. But overall, I like this powerful move up here when a lot of stuff wasn't acting too well in the growth space. You can see a lot of volume coming in around this earnings report. So there are a bunch of signs of accumulation. Moving on, we've got Uber, similar to Lyft. You've got not the greatest growth numbers, but it is supposed to improve its earnings at least in 2021 and 2022. Composite rating is very poor at 59, but you've got a bunch of funds accumulating shares and 4 high quality funds in there as well. Overall, I could use a undercut and reclaim of the 50 here. I like how all the moving averages are kind of coiled under the price here. And you also have kind of this standard pivot, which is at the high at 58.99. Moving on, we've got UPST, and you can see a huge earnings gap up here. Not the greatest earnings, but obviously the news was strong enough to have this major of a gap up that's significant. And you can see great estimates for 2021 and 2022 with the estimate revisions up as well. The composite rating is a strong 92, 51 funds in here and 1 high quality fund in there as well. You can draw this kind of descending trend line here and also this line right here. Overall, a nice move on Friday. Let's see if that can kind of continue with potentially a wick setup using this high as a pivot, or potentially an undercut and reclaim of this low would be a pretty good entry point as well. So that is UPST. And last on the list, we've got Snapchat, like Twitter, very strong. And you can see very strong earnings the past 2 quarters. Not supposed to be profitable in 2021 or 2022. Composite rating is a 95. A nice increase in fund ownership and 4 high quality funds in there as well. Looking at the chart, it's very similar to a lot of these. It's right at that midpoint. I want to see a consolidation here, then a move through this point, or potentially a move up and setting up a handle right here below the standard pivot at 73.59. So that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And let me know down below in the comments what are your top 3 ideas for this upcoming trading week. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys in future videos.